Hello? Hello? Can you
We
hear
can
me?
hear you.
We can
We
hear
can
you,
hear you
yes.
now.
Oh, sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I had some difficulties in getting to this webinar. Okay. Thank you so much for your kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm very sorry. I apologize. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for inviting me to this to join you today. I salute the Jewish Federation of New Orleans for organizing such a meaningful conference. So who are the Uyghurs? First of all, Uyghurs are a Turkic Muslim people. They have a rich culture and history. Uyghurs call their homeland as East Turkistan, but the Chinese government call it Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. The region is very rich in natural resources like oil, natural gas, gold, and other rare minerals. Uyghurs have close ties with the people in Central Asia, culturally and linguistically. And these ties, and also being a different people, is the fundamental reason why the CCP sees them as a threat, their identity as a threat, and has implemented policies which seek to eliminate their culture and eliminate them as a people. East Turkestan is also geopolitically and strategically very important for the Chinese government's global influence and economic power. The CCP seized the control of East Turkestan in 1949. Policies in the region have long been repressive. We experience political repression, economic discrimination, and cultural erasure. However, these repression and repressive policies worsened in 2010s, and since 2017, escalating to the point where they meet criteria of genocide convention. The most shocking element of this campaign is a network of camps which have swept up enormous numbers of people. Reasonable estimates put it at 1.8 to 3 million people. Uyghurs from all walks of life is being targeted, intellectuals, religious leaders, scholars, students, teachers, artists, farmers, and business people. We have lost touch with our families. All of us got messages 3 years ago saying, do not call us again. And they deleted us from their chats. So we don't know who is in a camp. We don't know who died in custody. The government denies that they are camps and says they are vocational training schools. But the satellite images show barbed wire and guard towers. Millions of Uyghurs in concentration camps have suffered unspeakable trauma. Survivors have told us they are tortured, starved, raped, forbidden from speaking their language, and given unknown drugs and medications. People in the camp are forced to say over and over again, my soul was infected with a disease. That disease means our fate, and I don't believe in God. I believe in the Communist Party. The camps are expanding so much that they can be traced by satellite images. You can find them on Google Earth on your computer. This has been known for almost 3 years. Arrests and sentences in prison are also rising. A Uyghur woman in the US recently learned that her sister was sent to a prison after spending 2 years in the camp. She was sentenced for 7 years for grieving or praying at her father's funeral years ago, and another 10-year sentence for having a copy of Quran in her house. The breaking up of Uyghur families is shocking. Many Uyghurs abroad face the nightmare that their nieces and nephews, their grandchildren, or their own small children were taken away to a state orphanage. They are forbidden to speak Uyghur and raised as Chinese children. Probably they will be separated forever. Even if the camps are closed, we can never trace these children if they lost all their family memories of their families. My people are also being subjected to mass prevention of birth. Through forced abortion, forced sterilization, it is being called demographic genocide. According to research by Chinese scholar Dr. Adrian Zenz, between 2015 and 2018, the birth rate among the Uyghurs dropped 60%, and last year 24%. It seems in a few years there will likely be a few Uyghur marriages and very few Uyghur babies born. It is a brazen plan to eradicate the Uyghurs as a people. The Chinese government has been crushing our culture, traditions, and land. Our language is restricted in schools, and Uyghur books have been removed from libraries. All signs of religious faith are punished. In October last year, my organization, Uyghur Human Rights Project, issued a report on the destruction and desecration of Uyghur mosques and shrines, showing mosques that have been demolished or destroyed by Chinese government. According to a report by Australian Strategic Policy Institute, released in October, 35% of the mosques have been destroyed since 2017, and another 30% were damaged. Anyone not in the camps is in an open-air prison. Uyghurs cannot choose where to work, how to marry, and what to name their children, because it is banned now in China for Uyghurs to give their children's Muslim names like Muhammad or Aisha or Fatima. They are watched so that they do not pray at home. They are under constant surveillance and pressure from the CCP. Uyghurs are subjected to a massive program of forced labor. The government's plan for so-called poverty alleviation have a horrific end goal. Every adult Uyghur who is not in the camp or prison must be in a controlled place of work. They are taken away from their businesses, from their farms, and forced to work in factories where they can be watched closely. Uyghurs are also subject to daily political indoctrination and re-education. They have to attend flag-raising ceremonies and sing songs praising the Communist Party. Uyghurs cannot say no, or they will be punished. Uyghurs live under constant surveillance and fear even outside the camps. High-tech surveillance means all Uyghurs live in constant fear. Uyghurs are covered 24/7 by cameras, checkpoints, and apps. Police stations are everywhere, checkpoints are everywhere. Every neighborhood is blocked, and police scan your ID before you can enter. China's high-tech companies are helping with the surveillance of the Uyghurs. In 2017-18, officials collected detailed information from everyone about their family background, connection with foreign countries, travel history, and religious habits like praying. This data is fed into the computer system and connected to facial recognition cameras. Private companies are getting huge government contracts for the surveillance systems. Huawei is selling so-called Muslim tracking software using facial recognition, voice prints, and other data. The Chinese government has also sent more than 1 million ethnic Han cadres into Uyghur homes to spy and report on the families. Chinese propaganda calls it becoming family. But in fact, these Han Chinese cadres effectively destroy Uyghur families or family life. There is also emerging evidence of sexual abuse and rape in these situations. The officials post photos on the social media showing how they are sleeping in the same bed with the Uyghur families to show to their to their leaders that they are carrying out this program perfectly. Uyghurs abroad suffer psychological torment and grief. We are living with trauma because of nightmares about our own family members, schoolmates, and friends. We are living with the knowledge that our people and our homeland are being erased step by step. China is also intimidating Uyghurs around the world, adding additional trauma. Some Uyghurs abroad have been pressured into spying on other Uyghurs for the Chinese government by threatening to harm their families back home. My organization, the Uyghur Human Rights Project, has also documented that the Chinese government is weaponizing passports in an attempt to force Uyghurs to go back to China, where they face certain detention, torture, and even death. New reports are still coming out about horror of forced labor. A new report came out just last week. It documents a massive program to force Uyghurs to pick cotton by hand in 2018 and 2019. It involves 600 to 900,000 Uyghurs. Officials came to their homes and subjected them to so-called thought transformation to force them to go to the fields to pick cotton without pay. Forced workers are also being locked up in factories. Chinese government media themselves reported that in the first half of 2018, more than 60,000 workers were transferred to new workplaces. In fact, the true numbers must be much higher. Young Uyghur women, in February, the media uncovered a factory making Nike sports shoes using Uyghur workers in a city in northern China. Young Uyghur women were brought to this factory in a batch by the government. They were monitored, forced to take so-called patriotic education classes, and not allowed to leave. 84% of the China's cotton is grown in my homeland, East Turkistan. That means at least 1 in 5 cotton garments worldwide is probably made with the Uyghur forced labor. Nearly every clothing company is complicit. We have been campaigning for the US government to impose a blanket ban on imports from Uyghur homeland. On December 2nd, the US government finally imposed a ban on all cotton products from the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps. The Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps is a military-style force with a huge global business footprint. It produces 30% of Xinjiang's cotton. My organization praised this action. It is the most significant form of pressure to stop the Uyghur genocide and economic pressure on China. We can put pressure on the companies like Zara, Nike, and many others, the companies who still have not cut their supply chain tainted with the forced labor. In closing, I would like to ask you to call your senators to ask them to support S 3471, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Please support the Uyghur human rights organizations. We are a very small community and we need the help of others to fight this genocide and at least rescue some of our people. I hope concerned Americans can donate generously. You can do it by visiting UHRP website if you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kanat. That was very moving. And I realized as I was listening that there was so much about this crisis that I didn't know or understand. And I'd like to use that as a starting point for questions. I'm looking at the participants list now and not knowing every single person's name, but knowing who we've targeted, I think most folks here are either American born or American citizens or living in America. Has America done enough to help Uyghurs in the face of this genocide? And more specifically, if there's a lack of knowledge or understanding of what's happening here, which I believe there is, what do you attribute that to? You speak to the US ban on cotton products and other things we can do, banning certain companies, which I'd like to also go into, but do Americans know enough about what's happening right now? And what more can we do?
Yes, I can say that the US has done more than any other country in the world, although it's not enough. Since last October, the Trump administration imposed human rights sanctions and import and export bans to over 40 Chinese government agencies and companies. These are perpetrators of forced labor, mass detention, torture, and surveillance. But we need, of course, more pressure, but because China didn't change its attitude toward the Uyghurs, still people are being rounded up and taken to the concentration camps. This illegal detention, they are in illegal detention because people are not charged with any crimes who are in this being held in these camps without any charge.
Right.
So I would like to ask everyone here to call their senators and because there is a legislation, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. This legislation, this bill has now 33 co-sponsors in Senate. It already passed the House, but the two senators from Louisiana have not co-sponsored it yet. Please call their office and ask them to end American profits from the Uyghur forced labor. You can just leave a 30-second voicemail asking them to co-sponsor S 3471, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act.
Okay, thank you, Mr. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, we also need, of course, as I said in my remarks, we are a small community here in the US, and we have to fight this, Chinese genocide, Chinese government genocide alone. So we need your help. We also need your financial support, especially. We are very, only 2 human rights donors in the US, or donors or foundations, have supported Uyghur human rights projects work. The others say they don't want to endanger their other programs in China. But Uyghurs, can, as I said, cannot do this advocacy alone. We would be incredibly grateful for your generous support. If our friends in New Orleans can go to our website, the Uyghur Human Rights Project website, uhrp.org, and click on the donate button. Even $20, $50 will make a difference to us. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kanat, and we will make sure that either we or your team distribute all of that information out to our audience following today. Thank you, and it's clear there's much to be done on this issue, and a lot of us don't understand it and are not involved in having it come to an end. I'd like to ask you, I understand you said the Uyghur people have been oppressed for 70 years. I'm wondering, on a more personal note, if any of your relatives suffered political repression when you were growing up, and how that sort of affected your development and your experience as a child.
Oh, yes, I think every Uyghur family has a story, everybody, because, in the US, there are about 8,000 to 10,000 Uyghurs. So every Uyghur family in the US has someone now, suffering in these concentration camps, and they also have, their families suffered under this Chinese communist regime. Yes, my father was arrested, for example, in my personal story. My father was arrested. He was in prison when I was born. And also my grandfather from my mother's side was executed by Chinese government. I didn't know him, my father. I didn't know my father at all. He came out of prison when I was almost 9 years old. I suffered I suffered myself from this as well. When I was 8 years old, during a National Day celebration, I was standing with other classmates. We were all dressed up with a white shirt and our red pioneer red scarf around our neck. This red pioneer scarf was the symbol that we are all good students and followers of the Communist Party leadership. Suddenly, a teacher approached me. She angrily took the red scarf from my neck and ordered me to go home, saying that I don't have the right to stay there because my father was a Uyghur nationalist. I came home crying. My aunt, in order to calm me down, gave me a ride on her bicycle. At that time, bicycle was a luxury, so it was a very special thing to get a ride on a bicycle and show that he then after my father was released from the prison, he tried to get to know me and show me that he loved me because he was a stranger to me. Until his death, he died. Until his death, I didn't call him father because others were calling him brother. So I always call him by his name, or brother. Abu Qasim is my father's name, so I called him brother Qasim. So I couldn't, we couldn't establish that the father and son relations after that 9 years separation. And so he, in order to show that he loved me, he took me out to eat at a restaurant so I could have my, favorite Uyghur dish. But he only had enough ration coupons to buy the food for me. He couldn't order anything for himself. At the time, I didn't know about it. I just ate until I was full, and my father could only have the leftover. Now I feel so bad when I remember this. You know, as a child, I didn't realize how much my father suffered just for being a Uyghur and how much he sacrificed for me.
Thank you, Mr. Kanat. Thank you for sharing that. It's very, very meaningful and very beautiful. And I'm sure many of us are touched, and it really is so critical, again, on this issue that I imagine few of us truly understand, to get this personal insight and understanding. So we are extraordinarily grateful to you for telling your story. I know we're running over time, but I just want to ask one more question if I could. And it's sort of a clarification question. I want to make sure we're all sort of on the same page. Is the dehumanization of Uyghurs being carried out by the government only? Has it seeped into Chinese society? How do Chinese people conceptualize the Uyghurs? And are there other Muslim minority communities in China, and are they being targeted by the Chinese government or Chinese society?
Yes, I can say that, first of all, in East Turkestan, there are not only Uyghurs, there are also Kazakhs and Kyrgyz. There are also Turkic Muslim people. They are also being targeted by the Chinese government. That means that all Muslim, Turkic Muslim people in East Turkestan, the original inhabitants of that land, is being targeted by the Chinese government. In China, of course, the press and media is under the strict control of the government. People don't have access to free information and free independent information and news. Unfortunately, because of the Chinese government's decade-old, propaganda, a large part of the Chinese population believe what the Chinese government saying about the situation in my homeland, Turkestan, about the Uyghurs. They think that the government is right in its treatment of the Uyghurs, but those Han Chinese people who know what's really happening in Uyghur homeland are critical of the government's policies and express their sympathy to Uyghurs. During, for example, several speaking events which were organized by different universities in the US, many Chinese students approached me privately and expressed their sympathy and condemned the Chinese government's brutal repression of Uyghurs. And of course, another thing is many Uyghurs abroad, because we don't have a communication, as I said, the communication between the Uyghurs out of China, out of East Turkestan, has been cut, since 2017. For 3 years, we have not been able to get in touch with our families. Many Uyghurs abroad get the information about their families' whereabouts through their Chinese friends, classmates, and neighbors. Because, if we call, someone, if a Uyghur calls someone from abroad, then China will, monitor or listen. But the Chinese, Han Chinese, is free to, to communicate with the people in abroad. So, as I said, many Uyghurs get the information through their Chinese friends, classmates. It was Chinese, for example, it was Chinese student, Fan Zhang, in Canada. He is a Chinese student in Canada who, for the first time, found the satellite imagery of the camps.